Chairman, thanks so much for joining us on the
Good to be with you.
On the bottom line. Hey, on Truth Social, President Trump just put out there that I used to serve in Congress with you. Billy Long is going to head up the IRS. Yeah. Did you see that? What are your thoughts on Billy Long heading up the IRS?
Well, no, he was a great colleague, a good conservative member of Congress. I think he'll do a great job at the IRS. And like all these picks that President Trump is nominating and putting forward, they're going to put the American people first. They're not going to use these agencies to target and be weaponized against we the people. They're actually going to serve the taxpayers, serve the people. And of course, at the IRS, you want someone who understands their job is to serve the taxpayers, not have 87,000 agents or whatever that crazy bill was that the Democrats put together and Biden signed coming after the American people, but actually providing the service that they should to the taxpayers of this great country.
Chairman Jordan, where did Joe Biden get that $1.5 billion to just hand over to Africa? Where'd that come from?
I'm sure it was out of some State Department fund. We can check exactly where it came from. But you talk about his legacy. The Biden legacy, I mean, it started with a lie the entire presidency. Remember when he stood at that debate and said, 51 former Intel officials said the Hunter Biden laptop wasn't true, when in fact it was, and he knew it, and our FBI knew it at the time. And then, of course, it ended with the lie, or is ending with the lie that happened on Sunday night when he said, I wouldn't pardon my son, and then, of course, he turns around and does it. And everything in between that has been a disaster. I wish it weren't so. He's our president, but you cannot point to one thing. Did they handle the border right? Did they handle inflation? No, we're at record inflation. I mean, taxes went up, bad energy policy, foreign policy, the exit that was, the debacle that was the exit from Afghanistan, and you can just keep going. I don't know one thing they did right. There is no legacy other than it was terrible, and thank goodness President Trump will be there in 40-some days.
Well, and also you have the Hunter Biden getting the pardon that he promised he wasn't going to do, and the judge really took him to task, didn't he, Congressman?
Yeah, I mean, this pardon, I mean, Jason, you guys know it's for 10 years and 11 months. I've never seen it. So, I mean, from January 1st, 2014 to December 1st, 2024, and of course, those first 3 years, 14, 15, 16, were while Joe Biden was president, or excuse me, vice president, and of course Hunter Biden was getting all this money from Burisma. Remember, we now know the story. Joe Biden goes to Ukraine and tells the government there, if you don't fire the prosecutor who's putting pressure on the company that Hunter Biden sits on the board of, you're not getting the loan guarantee money. And so he leveraged American tax dollars to do something that benefited this company, which benefited his family, and maybe most importantly, we learned in our impeachment inquiry investigation, benefited the brand, benefited the Biden family. So I think that's one of the big problems we see with this pardon, the breadth and the length of time. We've just never seen that before.
Before we move on to your hearing today in the House Judiciary Committee, Congress, and Jason and I were saying this earlier, you know, nothing good comes out of a lame duck session of Congress. And you've got what the government runs out of money December 20th. And my backside is still chapped about that omnibus bill 2 years ago. Yeah. So you've got to fund the government. What say you? How's it going to get done? And how much money will people of your ilk manage to waste?
Well, I think there's always a lot of waste in the government. Look, there's a debate happening whether it's an omnibus, which I don't like and didn't vote against the one that you just talked about, or didn't vote for the one you just talked about, I voted against it, or do we do something short term, gets us into early next year, and then let President Trump and the new administration, when we have a majority in the Senate, get a better package for the American people and more efficient use of their tax money. So we're debating that right now. The Speaker's indicating he wants to go with the short-term one. I think that's probably where it should go.
Yep.
We'll just have to wait and see. But I think a lot of that depends on what President Trump wants too. Does he want everything cleared off, or does he want something in next year where he can put his stamp on it right from the get-go? We'll just have to see, but we're gonna figure that out here in the next couple weeks.
There was $16 billion in earmarks in that omnibus 2 years ago, and more than $500 million went just to Richard Shelby, who was retiring. See, I told you I was still mad. Go on, Jason.
Yeah. All right, real quickly, Chairman, that you chair the House Judiciary Committee and held a hearing today on the fraud and abuse of America's immigration system. The Border Patrol chief, he shares one of the biggest flaws. Listen to this.
It's what we don't know. There are still areas of the border that we don't have persistent surveillance, and we need to be able to know who's coming in, and we need to be able to stop them. We need to make them come through the front door. It's that unknown and what the intent is that scares me the most, and probably any other law enforcement and border security professional that you're going to ask out there. It's why are they coming in? Why aren't they using the front door? And what are they planning on doing that could potentially harm our country and our people?
It really is a national security issue. What did we learn today, Chairman?
Well, I mean, first of all, the situation was created because on day one, the Biden administration said, no more wall, no more remain in Mexico, and when you get here, you'll be released. And so when you won't be detained, you won't be deported. So everyone came. And then they created additional programs, and we focus on this in our hearing today, this CNHV program, where if you're from Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, or Haiti, you get a special lawful pathway, a term they just made up out of thin air, and they get paroled into the country. They're flying 30,000 people a month into the country from these four other countries. And so that program has been problematic, and they're actually allowing people who come in as parolees then to be a sponsor or supporter of someone else coming in. That's ridiculous. So this is unprecedented, and again, it all ends in 40-some days when President Trump is sworn in as our next president.
And before we let you go, so the House subcommittee finally released this 2-year report on COVID-19 and the origins. Yeah. And more than anything, Chairman, it puts the onus on you who are still in Congress and on the incoming Trump administration to look into. They found out the Justice Department secretly impaneled a criminal grand jury to investigate the origins of COVID and look into the EcoHealth Alliance run by Peter Daszak. And so now you've got to pick up the ball and keep running with it of how this organization, this institution in the United States got money and was involved in this research and essentially spreading the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are all kinds of concerns. My biggest takeaway, though, Dagan, is the fact that we let the government and these unelected officials like Dr. Fauci take away our liberties, and everything they told us as the reason, as the basis for taking away our First Amendment rights was false. I mean, you can go through the list. They said it didn't come from a lab. Yes, it did. Wasn't our tax dollars used at the lab? Yes, it was. Wasn't gain of function research done at the lab? Yes, it was. Mask work, they told us. They told us the 6 feet social distancing was based on science. They said the virus, if you're vaccinated, you can't get the virus and you can't transmit the virus. All those things turned out to be fun. Here's the other one. They told us that this was the first virus in history where there's no such thing as natural immunity. They were 0 for 8. 8 things they told us that were not accurate, and yet they took our liberties away from us based on things that they were telling us. So that's the biggest takeaway. And then you add to it this organization with our tax money doing what they did. This is how bad it was and why it's important Congress do its oversight, which Chairman Chaffetz knows a little something about as well.
Well, I do hope, Chairman, between you and Brad Wenstrup and James Comer and others are able to get the documents from, for instance, from Pam Bondi as the Attorney General, that those coffers are opened up and the files are actually given to Congress so they can do their oversight role.
Yeah, no, you know how this works. It's always easier to work with your team, with the Republican team and your party is in the White House and at the Justice Department than it is trying to get it when it's the other way around. So let's hope that all happens. I think it will.
The American people deserve answers. But again, fear equals control, and control equals power. And nobody will make us fearful anymore, ever again. I think that's what we learned. Congressman.
Well said.
Always good to see you, Chairman.